Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So, as I had said the other day, I was going to do a step-by-step guide on how to build a VPN on a Raspberry Pi. So the time has come to do that. Alright, so I kind of have an interesting setup here today. My camera is actually a little bit different from everything else because we're going to need to do a few different things. So, in order to get started on this, what are the things that we are going to need to do? Well, first let's gather the materials that we will actually need. The first thing that you will need, obviously, is a Raspberry Pi. So I have mine with a case, and it has some heat sinks on there on the processor and things. And I think I bought this kit for like $70, which comes with the Pi, the heat sinks, the case, a power adapter, a Wi-Fi USB plug. Let's see what else was in there. I think I got a copy of Raspberry was already set up in there. Might have been something else in there as well. A couple getting started kits. So that's one option. If you just happen to have a Raspberry Pi laying around, or you just buy an individual one, you can buy the Pi for about $30-$35. You can buy any random case for like 10 or so. You can even buy little tiny, they're really cute, little tiny fans you can put on your processor. The heatsink generally is okay. As I've looked at these, we don't generally have a problem. So we need a Raspberry Pi. You will need an SD card to run your operating system / VPN. So I have a little 8 gigabyte card here laying around that was a spare card. So that's what I'm going to be building this on. I actually have the one that I actually have and use. We're going to be walking through all the setup guides, but I'm not actually going to use this. I'll wipe it when I'm done for something else. But the one that I'm actually going to that I really use is on a 2 gigabyte card. So if you just happen to have a 2 gigabyte micro SD card laying around, that's probably sufficient. In fact, I know that's sufficient. And it's, we're not talking about anything that's a lot of space. And again, you do not want your VPN to do anything else. You can set it up on a regular computer. I set it up on my Ubuntu computer once. Yeah, knocked out internet. I had to go mess with that and figure it out again. So you just need an SD card. You will need a input device. So I just have my little USB guy that goes into my spare keyboard, and I have a mouse, although we will not need the mouse. You will also need a monitor. So I will be using this monitor that is usually running my Linux Mint KDE. But I'm going to be using that cord there, which is, here's my power adapter. Of course, you need a internet line, and I'm going to be hardwiring it into a cable that's down here, and hopefully I can get my cable connected to my monitor. I don't know. I might actually have to use this monitor. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll get it figured out. So you need that. Of course, you want a power adapter. If you happen to get a Raspberry Pi without a power adapter and you need to look for one, you want to be supplying about 2 amps into your Raspberry Pi. You can run it on a little bit less, but it may foul up. It may not run smoothly. You may run into some inconsistencies and some errors. So use a 2 amp power adapter for your Raspberry Pi. So those are the basic pieces of hardware that you need. You are going to need some software. So to start, we are going to be basically just building a command line interface with Raspberry Lite on here. So if you go to get your Raspberry Pi, or if you have one and you are looking for an operating system, then you have a couple of options. If you would like an operating system with a desktop environment, you want the Raspberry Jessie with the Pixel environment. Or if you do the Raspberry Jessie Lite, there's no desktop environment, you just have a terminal interface, but that's what you need to start on. And then there's several different guides that will help you get this guy set up. The one that I think this is the one that I used, just based on the images. I think this is the guide that I used, and if it's not, then oh well. Pretty much all I need to remember is just the very first command line, and I know that that's correct. And so we're going to get started here, and first step is going to be to put your Raspberry Lite on your SD card. So you need a means to do that. Whether you are using in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little converter that's going to convert my SD card to a USB port. You can also just plug it right in. So what I've done at the start here is I have downloaded the file, and then I ran it through a checksum. You know what? I'm actually not going to use a USB port because my computer's maxed out on USB ports right now. Hold on. All right. So scratch that. I'm going to go ahead and convert mine to a full-size SD card there. Hopefully that adapter works. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I got my sound. It sounds like it worked. And what I am going to do here is I'm going to come over. Here's my file. I'm going to extract this, which gives me the image file. And then once this finishes extracting, then I'm going to use the disk image writing tool, if it goes. Okay, there it goes. So I use Linux Mint. The reason I like Linux Mint, as I've said many times before, it has all of the various tools and things that I need. So there is a disk writer. There is a USB writer. Actually, I think the one that I'm going to use, though, I think I can get to just by right-clicking it. And disk image writer is the application that I want. And our destination, be extremely careful here. If I write it right over here, I'm going to get Jesse Raspberry on here because, yeah, you can actually mess up a Linux system like that if you're not careful. So here we are. We're going to put this onto the disk, and it says the disk image is 6.6 gigabytes smaller than the target device. That is just as fine. We're going to hit Start Restoring. It's going to confirm. We're going to wipe everything out. We do need a root password to do this. And this says it's going to take about 3 minutes to finish writing to the disk. So that's what it's going to take to put Raspberry Lite on here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to close out the video, and I'm going to, once this is done writing, I simply mount that into the bottom port of the Raspberry Pi here. And then I'm going to plug in the input. I'm going to plug in the power, the monitor, and the internet, and then we will actually point the camera at a screen and walk through the next steps. So I have plugged everything in there and plugged the Pi in, and it is now working through what it needs to work through. Does a first resizing script. It's going to reset everything, and now we're running through the initial boot script of the Raspberry. One thing I forgot to look into real quick while it's doing that, I totally forget what the default root password is there. Okay, so the default is, username is Pi, and password is Raspberry. Oh, if I spelled it right. Login. There we go. Now we are in. And so the first thing that you would like to do is you probably want to go ahead and change this, because if somebody does happen to get back behind here and you're using a Raspberry Pi default stuff, then you could actually very easily get hacked. So what we're going to do is use the basic password script. It wants the current password. And then it wants the new password. And I'm just going to do something so simple. I'm just going to do open VPN. It wants the new password again. Oh, it's too simple? Really? Huh. I never have known a terminal password thing to actually be too simple. Let's do open VPN 1. Okay, so you never want to use a password that is that simple for something that is production. And my main production system has an extraordinarily complicated password. But for this case, we're just going to use this as a simple test case just to show you how to set everything up. And I need to grab a sticky note so I can make sure I remember what everything is. Okay. So there is some information that you are going to need to know by default. So the first thing we're going to do on getting this guy set up, we might want to do an update and an upgrade before we do anything else. Just make sure we start being up to date. So just run our sudo apt-get update. This is going to run our updates there. It's going to just update all the packages, and then we're going to do sudo apt-get upgrade. And that way, if there's any issues, any bugs, whatever else, we're just going to, make sure that we're using all of the latest everything. So you probably can't read much of what's on the screen there, so that's why I'm just kind of walking through the basic steps. If I remember correctly, even the initial command that we have may give me an error. I think the problem is I need to change the keyboard. Yeah, that's what I need to do. So let me look up changing the keyboard again. It's not something I do much. Okay. So we're going to see how long this is to do. So not a whole lot. I didn't anticipate there being a whole lot. This Raspberry was just released a couple of days ago, so I don't anticipate there being a whole lot. So if I remember correctly, the keyboard setup is, I think the setup is in UK or something that's not United States. And so being as I'm in the United States, I'm going to have a very hard time typing in the command because one of the keys that I need is the bar key, and it's mapped to something else on whatever this keyboard is. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to look for the configuration file and just change it. So I'm going to pause the video until this is done upgrading, and then we will be back after that. So we are done updating now. Now I'm going to show you what the keyboard issue is. So if you look down there at the very bottom where my blinking cursor is, I'm going to hit the shift and the key that should give me a bar, which is right above the enter key. You'll notice that it does not give me the enter key. It kind of gives me what's that thing? A tittle, I think, that's next to the one key, shift one key. So that's kind of our problem, that I can't type in this command with how the keyboard is currently set. And why is the keyboard set this way? Well, because when you restore a disk image, it is basically recreating the operating system that you created. This is not like an ISO image that is a installation file. We did not install Debian, Raspberry Lite on here. We restored a disk image, and it just happens that the disk image keyboard is a little bit different. It's close enough that we should be able to get to where we need to get to. So I'm going to do sudo nano, and I hope that nano exists. I'm not actually a huge fan of Vim, and I just kind of like, now everyone that really loves Linux hates me. Okay, but I'm not actually a big fan. Of course, I got to spell keyboard right. All right, so good. Nano is on here, and then what we need to look for is the line that says layout. So you'll see that it says GB. I want to change this to US because that happens to be where I am. Oh, you can't even see that. Ha ha ha, look at that. That's the downside of doing all this with the camera. I have to manually adjust things. So I got my file up here. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Focus. It's focusing like a 7th grader in science class. All right. There we go. There's a little bit better at least. So you can see that one. It is XKB layout, and I just need to change that. In my case, I need to change that to US. If you are in a different country, just change it to your individual country. I'm going to hit Control X, hit Y to save the changes, and hit Enter. Of course, if we did not use sudo to get in there, we would not be able to edit that. And so now, actually, I think I need to do a restart. So I'm going to do sudo. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the system down and reboot her up. Okay, I'm going to reset to the full screen if I can here. So the update that we ran, the sudo apt-get upgrade, took about 10-15 minutes to start. Well, to finish, I should say. So if you get a feeling for how long it takes us to load up, usually I run the VPN without actually having your monitor plugged in. You don't really need it. There we go. And now you will see that I have my keyboard is now configured correctly. So now we're going to type in our command. And I will link where this tutorial is in here. There are a few things that are a little bit different, but for the most part it still works unless it has radically changed since I created my own VPN. I don't think it has, though. I'm just going to configure that. We're doing https://install.pyvpn.io, and then we are bashing the command. Okay, it does check to make sure that we are up to date, so that was a good reason why we would want to go ahead and do that sudo apt-get update first. So now it is going to be installing packages. This could take up to about a minute or so, and I will turn the camera back on when we are ready to move to the next step. Okay, so we have finished our installation there. It just took like about a minute or so to grab the packages. Now we have a automated installer. It says this installer will transform your Raspberry Pi into an open VPN server. Push OK. All right, so the Pi VPN is a server, so it needs a static IP address to function properly. All right, so this is important. You need to make sure that, like, if you have a basic home router set up and you just, pull it out of the box and set it up, you have a DCHP client, or a DHCP client, sorry, that will configure your devices as they hit the internet. So if I come in and I turn on my new laptop, it just gives it an IP address. And then if my old computer's on, it gives it an IP address. And then maybe today I decide I don't need to turn my old computer on. I'm just going to turn on the laptop. It gives it an IP address. And these are all internal LAN addresses, but they could be randomly different. But you can do reservation tables, and on any given router, you can set up a static internal LAN IP address for any given device based upon the MAC address. And so I've done this for most of my systems. Obviously, all my IP cameras, they are all on a static IP address. That's what allows me to program an app to look for them. And I also, I actually put pretty much all of my computers on there. Particularly, I do play some Warcraft with some friends online, and that actually you need to require a TCP pass-through port. And to get that to work, I have to have that computer on a static IP address. So essentially every device I have is, I just go in there as I have devices and set them up. So I'm not going to walk through how to do it on this step, because that just takes a long time, because every router is different. But you need to look up how to do a reservation table for your particular router. And I already have this guy set up. So it is set up on 192.168.1.125. That is what I believe is correct. So it says, is this a static address? Yes. So at this point in time, if you have not already gone in and set up your reservation tables, you want to do that before you forget what this number is, or write it down, and just to make sure that every single time this Raspberry Pi hits the internet, it is on that IP address. I'm going to say yes, that is possible. Now, it is possible your router could still try to assign this IP address to a device, which will then cause a conflict, but in most cases, the router is smart enough not to do that. If you are worried, either manually set the address or modify the DHCP reservation pool so it does not include the IP address you want. So that is an option. My router is a Cisco router. It is smart enough to do that. Once something is in the DCHP reservation pool, it never will assign that IP address to any other device. So it will lock that IP address to the MAC address of the device until I get in there and delete it. So make sure you have that step done. Now you want to choose a local user that will hold your configuration. So we're just going to go ahead and choose the Pi. If you do want to create a new user, you can do that. You can look online for how to create different users. What we did do at an absolute minimum, I'd say that creating a different user for it, maybe not better, but certainly you want to change the default password of that user. So we're going to say yes. So, since the server will have at least one port open to the internet, it is recommended that you enable unattended upgrades. So, this is something that I will definitely want to recommend. Now, in my case, it does warn you here, it is recommended you do this, but it will check daily, it will update these items, but it will not automatically reboot the server. So, just like every other Internet of Things device, reboot the thing every couple of days or every once a week or something. You have it on your schedule. Every Sunday I go through and I turn off all my Internet of Things devices and plug them back in. Because if somebody's been utilized your silly web camera, of course, once we set this VPN up, we don't want to do that. But if this is a server that you're always going to be having on in your house or in your office, once a month or once a week, I'd say, go ahead and reset it. That will make sure any automatic updates are applied and anything else. So, do you want to enable the unattended upgrades? Yes, I do want to do that. And once I hit the enter button here, it is cycling through some things at the bottom of the screen. We are finished with the automatic upgrade options. It goes through and configures some things for about a minute or so there, and then prompts us to the next screen. We want to choose the protocol. So we choose between UDP and TCP. So if you don't know the difference, you want to stick with the UDP. The TCP is going to be more reliable, but it takes more data, and there are a few other items with it. Basically, the UDP is going to be good enough for our cases in which aspect we are trying to get into our own home networks, or we're trying to use the internet from our own house, our own office, rather than the coffee shop or wherever else. The TCP is a little bit slower. It takes more data, and basically it's just a different protocol. We want to stick with the UDP. So I'm going to hit the tab and OK, and then now we want to enter the port. You want to take note of the port. 1194 is your default for the protocol, and I'm just going to keep it there. If you do want to ultra secure this thing, change it to something weird and random. Just make sure it's not something that's in use regularly, and you can take care of that. So changing that port is something else you can do. We're going to go ahead and keep that the same. So the port 1194, I did take note of it. Yes, that is correct. So now we're going to look at the encryption here. So this is going to be a part that will take you a long time. So the the 2048-bit encryption is basically the general recommended level. The 128 is for testing your server, and if you happen to be extra paranoid, you can go with the 4096-bit. I'm going to pick this one for the case of example simply because I know that the other ones are going to take a long time to actually build the system out. And I actually don't have all day to do everything here. You are going to want to pick probably between the 2000 or the 4000-bit encryption level, depending on your scenario and your level of paranoia, etc. I'm just going to pick the light one just to make this go faster. And so now it generates a key. So now it starts a generation process. Now, when I generated my keys, it actually took me, I want to say it was like 8 to 10 hours. It does tell you down at the bottom of the screen, this will take a long time. And the higher the bit rate you use, the longer time this is going to take. So what I'm going to do at this point in time, I'm going to stop the camera again, and we are going to come back on when this is done. So the next step is it's going to give us a information that we need. So we can either go with the public IP address, or you can go with a DNS entry. So the difference is the public IP address, this will default to whatever your IP address happens to be. So this is going to be edited out of the video. Ha ha ha. The public IP address is usually what I use. It's just seen by the VPN software that you're going to use to configure everything right. If you want to use a DNS entry, I could literally go get a domain name and set the domain name up to point directly to my home IP address and enter the domain name to access the VPN. You could do it either way. For simplicity, I'm just going to keep the IP address. You might want to use a DNS entry. If it's an enterprise type system, you definitely want to use the DNS entry. But in this case here, as long as you know what this number is, so this is yet another number to just write down. In my case, and actually in your case as well, it should be your public-facing IP address. We're going to go ahead and say that's fine. So next, it's like select your DNS provider. This is the part that I believe that threw me for a little bit of confusion, because we've already said we're not using any DNS. I'm just going to use my IP address, and so it asks me what I want to do. And I think if I recall correctly, I actually had to redo the system because of this. So if I'm remembering correctly on this, I'm just going to hit custom. This is the part I have to remember how to do that. Okay, enter your desired DNS. Okay, let me double check on this step here. This is that part that I had to remember. I'm going to leave that blank for now. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and type the IP address. I remember that there was a part that did not match the tutorial, and it gave me a struggle. I think this was it. So yes, that is correct. So we're going to say yes on this. Okay, now we're going to run the PyVPN ad to create the profiles. So the profiles is what you are actually going to use to log in. So ideally, you want to utilize a different profile for each individual person that would access this. So if I were to, and one of the plans that I have is to develop something like an own cloud server that I might want other people to be able to access in a way, I can actually create a separate VPN access point for everybody else. And so each person I'd want to have access to my own VPN, they get their own. So if one of my friends ends up being some bank robber or something, I can very easily revoke that one person's permissions without anybody else. Okay. So now we are going to reboot the system. Actually, let me double check something real quick here. We are not going to reboot the system yet. Okay, so install is complete. we are going to reboot the system. All right, so I will be right back on after I get this loaded back up. Okay, so we are back. I restarted the system. Let's see, we're at there. Okay, so I went back through and double-checked the documentation while the camera was off there, and that one, the last step we looked at was that step that is incorrect on the system, and I think it's a bug in the software itself, because if you went up to that screen and it said use this IP address or use a DNS entry, we selected to use the IP address, and the problem is there seems to be a bug in the software install process where it records DNS entry no matter if you pick the IP address or not. So we did the correct thing there. You have to go down to custom and type in your actual IP address. Okay, so we've rebooted the system. So now we have to run PyVPN add in order to add an individual user. So let me go down here, see if I can get that focusing. Okay, there's PyVPN add. We're going to run that, and then this should give us the information we need. I need to move the camera there slightly so I can read that. So we want to enter a name for the client. Okay, so the client, this is going to be the person who can access this. So I'm going to, again, don't ever use these individual settings. I'm just going to use them for example. But this is going to be the name. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to say Open VPN user is all I'm going to write. USR. So Open VPN USR. You want to use something different. On my production server, I have a name that I will remember that's linked to me and my businesses, but it's not going to be easy for someone to guess. Okay. Next, we want to enter a password. Okay, so I'm just writing down a password on my sticky pad so I can remember it. Now you'll notice as you type in the password, nothing happens. And this is a very good Linux security system because nobody else can see what it was. All right. So now that that is done, and what it did is it created a user key right there at home PyVPN. So now we need to get this guy off of there. And here is one of those little fun things that you need to figure out is what is the best way to distribute this key. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually go to this spot here. Let's see, CD Py and CD. Oop, helps if I type right. Okay, so you can see that what we have is a openvpnuser.ovpn. So that is the actual file name that we're going to use. So if you were to open this guy up, what you will see, usr.ovpn. Basically, all this is a text file that happens to contain all the information prototype stuff that we need, protocol stuff. So it tells you how we're doing it, what is our protocol, the connection, the port, how many times you work with it, and then it has all of your generated certificates. All right. So with that being said, what we need to do is we need to get this guy off. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video while I look for the last piece of information I totally forgot we needed, and that is a USB drive. I just need to make sure I can find one and that I can clear it off. And then we'll walk through how to mount that drive and grab this information, and then how to best distribute this information. Well, I cleared the screen out here, and then I found a USB drive, and I actually had a couple little issues. I formatted it on a Windows computer, and it was kind of giving me some weird output. So what we're going to do is I plug the drive in. I'm going to run a sudo fdisk-l, and this will give me the information. And hey, that looks a whole lot better. I just had a whole bunch of weird crap in there on the bottom line there when when the Windows computer was messing with it. So what we're looking for down here, the top two devices, the Dev MMCB, etc., is the actual drive on the Raspberry Pi. The one that the USB drive is the Dev SDA1. So what we are going to do is, this is simply mounting the directory. So if your directory mounts fine, then text messages. All right. If you know how to mount the directories, then just go ahead and mount your directories and copy it over. But in the event this is new for you, what we're going to do is we are going to do sudo mkdir, which is going to make a directory. And then we're going to name this media/USB. My camera is still slightly in my way. Okay. This is going to create a new directory called media USB, and then we are going to do sudo mount dev, and then we're going to pick SDA, just SDA, which is the name of the drive, and then we're going to mount this to the new folder, media USB. And then now we are set to go. So right here, I can see I'm in my directory and I have this file. So then what I want to do is I want to do CP, which is for copy the file. And then I'm going to type in the file name, which is the openvpnusr.ovpn. And then I'm going to, the second step is to say where you're putting it to. So we're going to do media/USB. And permission denied. Okay, if you get permission denied, it's because we need to do it with our sudo instead. So now that worked. So let's do cd media/USB. You'll see that the file is now there. So we're going to go back home now. And then we're going to umount media/USB. Oh, there we go. Had to do the sudo in front of that. Sorry about that. So now our USB drive can be safely removed. And I will now be able to transfer the VPN information onto other computers. So what we're going to do here is we're going to now walk through how to actually connect to the VPN. So I'm going to pause the video here and come back when we are ready to show you how to do it on a computer. Okay, so we are back on the Linux computer here, and I had to go all MacBook Pro and put a USB hub onto my computer because it's like, I need a fourth USB port now. So I had to go ahead and attach a USB port. So now my computer looks like, I mean, come on, this is what a MacBook Pro looks like, you know? You got stuff all over the place. I got my microphone, my external monitor, I got my power, I got my camera, I got my USB hub. My USB hub's got my mouse. I'm about to plug this guy in. So, all right, we're going all MacBook Pro on this bad boy. And I got to say that this computer, I bought this thing quite a while ago, and it still has better specs. Okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take my profile here and utilize this on Linux Mint to create a VPN system. So many of your Linux distros, I should say, should already be set up to utilize an open VPN. If it does not have that, let me see if I can find the commands. Pretty much if you can figure out how to do it in Ubuntu, that usually works. I've successfully set this up on Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Peppermint, other distros? I can't remember if I've tried other distros or not. And the challenge is when you have to look some of this stuff up is you have to make sure you're looking up the differences between in creating an open VPN server, which is what we just did on the Raspberry Pi, and creating an open VPN client. So that's kind of where your difference is. I'm just looking for a good document. So here's one using the Yum installer. It's basically you just need to install OpenVPN, which usually is installed by default. And then you also will need to install the OpenVPN network connectors and the GNOME network connector as well. I'm just looking for exactly which command it is in the event you don't have it. And most of them should. That is not it. Oh, that's the server stuff. How about OpenVPN connection? I'm just kind of doing this for the benefit of you if you do not have this already set up. Oh, I think I found it. It's all what you look for. All what you look for. Okay. Okay, yep, so that'll work. All right, so we're going to transition over here. So this is actually Ubuntu Handbook. Basically what I search for is OpenVPN connection in Ubuntu, just because a lot of your distros are going to be Ubuntu-based. The concepts will be the same. You need to make sure you have Network Manager OpenVPN is the package name, Network Manager OpenVPN. And that will enable your Network Manager to actually have the connection to choose OpenVPN as a connection type. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my USB port in here, and hopefully that should work. So you'll see it popped right up on the screen and it has the information there. So what we're going to do is come down to your networks, and then under network settings, I think it's network settings, I'll know when I open it up here. Okay, so you'll see here that I have an OpenVPN there, I have one here. I'm going to hit the plus sign over here, and then VPN, click on the OpenVPN, and actually I think this is the default one. I think there's a faster way to do this. Go down to connections, add. Yep, that's it. You can do it there manually setting it up, but if you come down to your network manager, hit network connections, hit add, pull down the drop down. Down here is OpenVPN, but there's also import a saved VPN configuration. Hit create, and then we just need to find our VPN configuration. You're going to see that it imports everything correctly. All we have to do is enter the password that we generated. So the key that we have here is going to work for, it's going to get the certificates, the user certificate, CA, the private key. The only thing you need to provide is the private key password. So hit save, and then now it should appear in your VPN connection. So now over here, you'll see that I can click on, click on OpenVPN, and then you'll see that it has successfully connected. So if I were actually on this connection on my cell phone internet, or if I were at a coffee shop now, I can just come down here, turn this guy on, and it will automatically configure my VPN. So that's how to do it there. I'm going to turn off the camera here for a second, and I'm going to go stare at my Windows computer for a minute in case you have to connect this to a Windows computer. I remember it giving me a little bit of difficulty just in finding the software. So I will be back with how to do this on a Windows computer in a few moments. Okay, so rather than mess with the Windows 7 computer, which is probably a little bit more antiquated, I decided I'd go ahead and install this on my Surface because I do actually use this computer out and about quite a bit, but I've never actually installed VPN on it. Mostly, I don't really connect this to the internet as much as possible because of that whole Windows thing, and the fact that I could not get the thing to stop trying to connect to random Microsoft servers, even though everything's turned off, and this is running Windows 8. I think it's 8.1. I can't remember for sure. But anyway, what we do is we go to the OpenVPN website, and under Community and Downloads, we want to download the package down here, which is it's the OpenVPN GUI application. And we want to grab the one that's for Windows, Vista, or later. So download that and install it. I'm recording this video posthumously. The audio was really messed up on the first one. I'm like, this is a 5-minute clip, so I'm just going to redo it. I want it to sound better. So what I need to do here is I'm going to insert my USB drive into here. So the USB drive, by the way, I formatted this as FAT32, or just FAT, actually. I forget exactly what I formatted as. But formatting a drive as FAT is the best thing you can do if you use different operating systems like I do, because FAT32 is compatible with Windows, Mac, and Linux. what is it, NTS, whatever Windows is, it starts with an N, isn't really compatible with a Mac or a Linux, and ext4, which is what I like for the Linux, isn't really compatible with the Windows, and I don't think it's compatible with the Mac. So using the FAT32, it seems to work well with everything. And so I've used the same drive to pass this thing back and forth between the Android phone, the Windows, the Mac, the Linux, So what we're doing here is we install the program, and then this creates for us an application that we can get to down here in the system tray. And it looks like a network icon. It says Open VPN GUI. And if you right-click this, you can hit the Import a File. So from the Import the File, you can just grab the one that you want to import, hit Open, and that will work. And I'm not going to do that because it is already there. But to connect to that file, now we want to right-click on the icon, and we want to hit the Connect button. And it's going to go through the script, and then it asks us for our password. So I'm going to put in my super secure password there, because it totally rocks. Hit OK. And then you will see that it is working through a bunch of network connections, and then it is actually going to come up with a message that says that it is online. So you can see that it has been properly assigned. And you will see that it is in the system tray, and if it has the green coloration on it, then it is active. So that's all we need to do to make this system work on a Windows platform. This is Windows 8.1. I'm guessing this works just the same on Windows 10, and I know the same process works on Windows 7. So connecting to your VPN on a Mac, what we need to do is we need to find and download the application called TunnelBlick. All of the instructions that I'm finding are indicating to do this. This is one of the things that does frustrate me about OpenVPN is they have all this great information. It's like to connect to Access Server for Mac OS X client, you need to do the following steps. Download and install OpenVPN client for Mac OS X. I'd love to have an official OpenVPN client, and I'm sure it exists somewhere. Think it's on this website? Nope. So that's really need to work on that, because if the actual OpenVPN thing exists, I'd like to download that. I couldn't find it, but all my instructions are telling me to use TunnelBlick, which is an open source platform, so that is going to work. So I download this. It's just like 11 megabytes or something. And then I come over here and I did my, just double click this to run it. And then what it's going to do is it adds a icon into the upper control up here. And we can see that there is some information there. So to actually install our VPN connection, what you need to do is grab and drag it over onto the icon, and it will do this. You have to give your computer permissions. It might give me an error because this is already installed, but let's see what happens. Okay, well, it just went ahead and did that. So you'll see you have a notification that says it's available, and now to connect, we want to come down here and hit connect to the VPN, and then we just need to give it our password. It is connecting, and you'll see there's in and out connection, and there we have it. So now you'll see that it is connected. It gives us kind of a lock indication, and if we hover up over here, it gives us the nice green saying that we are indeed connected. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect now. And then we will have a look at smartphones. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at how you can get your profile onto a Android phone. So I have here a Samsung Galaxy, and what we need to do is taking our USB drive, we need one of the devices that's going to convert a USB into your micro USB to plug into the bottom of the phone. You also can use one of these newer drives that has USB on one side and the micro USB on the other. So you can split between those types of drives here. And what we're going to do, you have to, this does not work as well as it should, but what you need to do is plug this in, and then when you first plug that in, it should give you a notification for the files. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our profile there, just hold on to that, and then you're going to click on your three vertical bars up the top, and you're going to type copy, and then I tried putting this onto the SD card storage, but it cannot find it if you put it on the SD card storage. So you have to go to device storage, and you'll see I've already pasted it in there, but you just want to hit paste there right in the root of the device storage. We can delete this later. So close that out. Then we're going to open VPN backup, and then we're going to come up to our top bar, and then hit import. And then import from SD card, although we're not actually importing from the SD card, we're importing from the device storage. You need to come down, find it in the list, hit select. Now, we should be able to, you should just be able to pop this drive in here and click on it, but I keep on getting the notification that, you know, it's either blocked, doesn't have permissions, or an app's not installed, so that's not the case. The only way I could get it to work, I also tried putting it on the SD card, that doesn't work, but putting it in the root of the device storage itself, now it's asking me for my password, and I just type in the password that I first gave it. Hit the save button to save it, hit next, and you'll see that it is going to start to connect. And now we are connected to the VPN, and I get my notification up there at the top that we are indeed connected. All right. So that is how to get this onto the Android phone and how to get that configured. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to delete the profile because I don't need that one on there as well. Now, getting it onto an iPhone is a little crazier because iPhone really doesn't support file storage like the device does. The only way I've ever successfully put this on any iOS device, there might be another way, let me know if there is, but I email it to myself. And I don't like sending it via email because email is inherently not all that secure, and we're talking about something that with that plus a single password could get a hacker into your system. So, yay for Apple! They're so secure, I have to insecurely transfer my files to myself. There might be a better way to do that. I don't know what it is, if there is. So let me know. But that's usually what I do, is I just pick a time. I go in, email it to myself, and then I quickly go through and scrub my email of the individual file. Now, once you have the file imported into your device, you can actually delete it. So if I come back into my Android phone here, and I go into my file manager, I should be able to delete the file from both the device storage and from all the locations I tried to drop it in the SD card to get it to work, which never worked for me. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then we should still be able to access it. It just needs that file there while it imports it. Once it's imported, it's kind of embeds it inside. So there is how to build a VPN with a Raspberry Pi, how to connect it to Windows, Linux, Mac, iPhone, Android. Of course, with the iPhone, when you email it to yourself, just click it in your email. It'll automatically set yourself up, and you'll be good to go. So this was probably the largest video I've ever done. This is going to be the most editing I've ever done on a single video, and I hope that it was very informative. Let me know if I missed any steps. I'm sure there are some goof-ups around here somewhere, and whatever. But anyway, this has been Tom, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.